In recent years, if you've attended one of SCAN's brain health fairs, you've probably met some of the students from Monmouth University who we collaborate with. Well, we have a great treat today. We have a recent graduate from Monmouth University, and I can't wait for you to meet him and hear his story. So if you want to know more, just stay tuned. Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to SCAN FYI. Yeah, great treat today. We have a Dr. Joe Napolitano. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure is mine.
Well, you know what? Pleasure goes both ways. And of course, on SCAN FYI, we love to have the opportunity to speak with doctors. But this, I will tell you folks, is no ordinary doctor. So, Joe, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about you?
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Joe Napolitano. So weird saying that, right? Because that's like the first time I've ever introduced myself like that. So I'm a recent new graduate of Monmouth University's Occupational Therapy doctoral program. So
That's a
um,
mouthful.
yes, very much. So a little bit about me. I local, not from Monmouth County, but from Ocean County. Went to Stockton for my undergraduate. Then came to Monmouth for my graduate schooling, and I loved everything that I ever did at school, especially the work that I did with SCAN. It was one of the most powerful things that I feel like I did throughout my time here. It definitely influenced me and where I want to go with my career after I graduate. But we'll get into that a little bit later. A little bit more about me. I love to just have fun. I love when I'm with clients, I love to make sure everything we're doing is meaningful. And we'll talk a little bit more about what, occupational
Mhm.
therapy is, what
Yes.
an occupational therapist does, those kind of things as well.
So we've been really fortunate at SCAN. Well, so many reasons that makes us fortunate to be part of SCAN. But several years ago, I think thanks to Dr. Denise Crowley, we started collaborating with the grad students in the occupational therapy program. And specifically, we started doing this in our brain health fair. So again, if you've been to one of our brain health fairs, we just had one recently. The students always facilitate the breakout groups, and honestly, they are the most fun. You know, we this year we had dancing, and I mean, it's just like an awesome experience. But of course, famously or infamously, I don't know which one, a couple of years ago, we all did the hand jive, right? And of course, Joe was the leader. And at that point, we all decided at SCAN, this guy has a different career path. If he wanted it, he could just be the MC of a show. Because you were just so much fun. But tell us a little bit about what is the collaboration, and how did you get involved in it?
Yeah, so like you said, Dr. Crowley was definitely the one who really took the helm of connecting us as students with SCAN. The collaboration with SCAN was really it was a project for us. She said there's going to be these three different groups. There's going to be an activity group. There's going to be a arts and crafts group. And if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a cooking group. And basically our job was to come up with these like activity stations
Right, right.
to kind of go like in a circuit almost, just to kind of act as almost like an OT, like a small snippet of like what an OT intervention could be. And in my group, I had the exercise group. And so right after we did the hand jive, because the hand jive part was like a little bit, it was like that like welcoming, if I
Yes,
remember correctly. We went into our group, which was the yoga ball drumming. And the yoga ball
oh,
drum,
the
I
best, the
yes,
best.
I loved it so much. It went so much better than I could have even imagined. And it's such like a simple little activity that I think because of its simplicity was so powerful and was so effective. But the hand job part was like I think this was like the second or third semester of us being there. So I was like really, really nervous. I was not used to like talking in big crowds or kind of being that person to talk a lot. And that was definitely the moment where, at least in my academic journey, I was like, I'm going to do something uncomfortable. And that's what it was. And it really did. It worked out really well.
Well, it was, but you know something, my favorite thing has always been the drumming yoga or yoga drumming. What is the right name for that?
The yoga ball drumming.
Yoga ball drumming. Why don't you just explain what that is?
Absolutely. So it was this activity that another student, of another student with me, Dr. Kayla Coleman, we came up with this protocol where it was basically going to be taking like a yoga ball, putting it in a
Which is like a very large, light as air ball. Yeah.
exactly, putting it inside of a like a hamper that you would do
A
like
laundry bed, like a
a
laundry
laundry
basket.
basket.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you would take two, it didn't it we did use drumsticks, but like it's very easy to makeshift anything really that could resemble a drumstick if you were to do it at home. And then we would play music, and in this larger group we would make sure that the energy was very high and you could just see everybody kind of playing the drums to whatever songs we were playing. And of course, me being the old soul that I am, I was raised on Frankie Valli and all these old kind and like Elvis Presley, all these oldest older music. I was like raised on that, so I knew right away when we came up with this. I was like, I want to do this older music to really appeal to this, to appeal to the population that we're going to be working with, and make sure they like know the songs that we're going to be playing.
It was my most favorite thing up to, to date. And unfortunately, the only downside, man, it was loud.
Yeah, I was
It
just
was
gonna say that.
loud.
I said I think the only issue was that it was loud and we might have been a little too loud for the other groups going on.
Because my recollection is the room next door might have had like a meditation.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
feel like we just took it over. But that's okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
that
So I think for Scan, when we were approached with the idea of doing this, first of all, I feel like it made it so much more interesting to have like an intergenerational kind of an activity. Because, what we've learned is for a lot of older adults who might not have kids, might not have grandkids, or they live far away, you don't have the opportunities to interact with, younger people or college students. So I think that for us, it was like a great treat to be able to do this. And I'm wondering
Mhm.
what it was like from your standpoint to interact with the older adults, like your
Oh,
grandparents and maybe even your parents.
absolutely. So my grandparents were a very big part of my life, like raising me. So I was always comfortable with this kind of like old soul mentality, right? And I think that for us coming into school where we get experience, working with all these different populations, it was a great way to see what it's like to work with that population. Because
Right.
one of the things that most people come into school with is they're like, oh, you know what, I want to do pediatrics, I want to work with little kids. And then you work with little kids and it's like, all right, I don't think I want to do that anymore. So it was the same way with Scan, because we got to see like how, at least for me, I might be a little biased because I love the older adult and I love working with them coming into school. But this just cemented me being like, all right, this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I know it because I connect very well with this population.
You know what I found very interesting is that some of the students who maybe had didn't have grandparents or didn't have people locally that they were able to interact with, on a continuing basis. And some of them had things to say like they were surprised that our scan folks were, as with it as they were, mentally and physically. And I feel like it's unfortunate that a lot of people, their feelings about older adults maybe come out of a caricature right out of the movies or something. And that's not the way we are at Scan. And I think some of the students were genuinely surprised.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I see exactly what you're saying. And I think a lot of that comes from like, as a student, you got to be able to take in what you learn from the textbook and not not live and die by it. And I think that's what happens when you live and die by only what you read in a textbook. You think every person that you ever encounter is going to be exactly like they said, like it says in a textbook. And I think with that kind of with the experience part, like you said, having grandparents and being in social situations outside of you as a student, I think helps you realize like, okay, not every single person is going to be the exact same, and not every single person is going to be need as much assistance and help as the next person might need one.
That whenever we hear someone say, "Oh, you don't look your age," whatever that means, and I don't know if that's even a compliment, frankly, but I want to say, well, what should that age look like? So that's part of the whole misconception. So I love the fact that the students got to work with us and we got to work with them. And hopefully, it goes both ways. Because I do feel a lot of times, older adults think, all these kids, they're all this, they're all that. And there are those kids, but then, we have been we've encountered the most fantastic students at Monmouth University. It's been such a pleasure for us, really. Love it. But
Absolutely. That's what.
one very important thing we forgot to do is, Joe, Dr. Joe, why don't you explain to people what is an occupational therapist? Because the name does not tell you what it is.
Yes. So, like we were talking before, you hear the name occupational therapist. One of the most common things is, oh, you help people find jobs.
Yes,
And
like a recruiter. Yeah.
yes, and it that is one of the avenues that an occupational therapist could do, but it's definitely not what it should be like summarized as. So an occupational therapist is a healthcare professional that really helps an individual of any age. So that spans across the lifespan. So it could be somebody working in pediatrics, or it could be somebody working in older adults. And so what that occupational therapist does is they use occupations, which are things that you do every day, things that you might not even realize you're doing. So that's things like walking, that's things like going from your bed to a walker. That's things like bathing, eating, leisure activities, dressing, anything that you think that you do every day, using those as almost like an activity to kind of get back your function or sustain your function, your um your activities of daily living are really what we focus on. They'll
Right,
be called
right.
ADLs.
I think of it as things that occupy your time. However you
Yeah,
occupy your time during the day, whether it's eating, drinking, dressing, bathing, etc., all the activities of daily living. Yeah, that's right. That's really
uh, and
what.
the key thing that really makes an occupational therapist is ensuring that whatever they are doing is meaningful, right? So an occupational therapist could come in and say, all right, we're going to work on dressing today. But if dressing isn't one of the goals of that client, then like that shouldn't be what that occupational therapist should be doing. It should be meaningful and be a desire of that client. And that's what really makes OT is the meaningful aspect.
So, Joe, who might need an occupational therapist? What would be an issue that I might have that I would say, well, I need to see an occupational therapist? We all know what a physical therapist, most of us, but what would make me think I need an occupational therapist?
So it could be that it is so broad, right?
It
The
is.
scope of what occupational therapists can do, right? So an occupational therapist could be a certified hand therapist. So if you have like a surgery requiring some therapy with um, any kind of fine motor deficit, that would definitely be something that a CHT who could be an OT you would go see. Another one, something that I'm very interested in is lymphedema. So if you're having lymphedema, that's another one that you would go see a occupational therapist or a certified lymphedema specialist who could be an occupational
Mhm.
therapist. But those are both kind of like these advanced certifications. Otherwise, I've seen patients like some of the deficits that I've seen patients for are things like balance, things like frequent falls. You'll get a referral for um you'll get a referral post surgeries like hip surgeries. One of my field works was in Central State Hospital in Freehold, and we would see patients for falls. We'd see patients for any post surgery, whether that's the hip, whether that's the knee, shoulder. just to make sure that you can, in that setting, it's to make sure you could go home. You could live by yourself. You could go back to the way you were living before. And if not, let's say you need to go to a rehab for a few weeks, which kind of rehab are you able to go to?
So now that you are a doctor, I mean, it used to be that to be a physical therapist and occupational therapist, you had to be referred by a doctor. It's very, the world has really changed, I think, for the better now, because now I can just go ahead and go to the physical therapist, right? I don't have to get a referral now that you all are doctors, which I think is extremely, I just think it's a very powerful thing. So what are your plans, Joe? What are you hoping to do
Absolutely.
now that you're finally done with school? 7 years,
I know it was a long journey.
seven
Um,
years.
so after, so like I saw you at that poster presentation, it was probably 2 weeks last week.
Yes.
And then graduation was last week as well. The next step for all of us, for all of the students, all of my classmates, is going to be to take our boards. So that's like our
Okay.
national exam.
Right.
And so with that, we can take it whatever we want. It's just about leaving yourself enough time to study and feel comfortable taking it. Um, but once you take that, you're free, like you pass it, then you become the registered and the licensed OT. Once you're licensed and registered, that's when you're free to work. Everybody, or not everybody, but a few people in our class have all started accepting jobs and have been in the talks already about jobs and whatnot. So it's really exciting the last few weeks of school, seeing everybody flourish into, the career and the path that they're taking, just because there is so many different lanes that you could go down as an OT. Just seeing everybody pick their lane was really beautiful.
I would say that when we started our collaboration with Monmouth University, most of us at SCAN, well, certainly, I'll say for myself, even though I had heard of an occupational therapist, I did not have a clear understanding of what it was and what its purpose was. Again, most of us knew what a physical therapist was. This was something different. But now that I understand it, and I just think, what a great career path, because it does offer you so many different options. And I
Absolutely.
think that's pretty cool. The fact that you have, like you said, you had a specific interest in lipedema.
Yeah, so my plan now is definitely going to be taking my boards. I believe I'm going to take those around June. Leave myself enough time to study same way that I've always studied. I don't think there's any point in kind of changing how I've always done it. But so then coming after that is I want to get into lymphedema, which is going to be the fluid buildup in the body for a handful of different reasons. One of those could be from a cancer or anything that really affects your lymphatic system and where fluid's not
Mhm.
really moving throughout your body. An occupational therapist could become a lymphedema specialist who really specializes in the interventions that really help that. And I observed a little bit of one and I just fell in love with that. And I fell in love with the therapeutic aspect of just talking to somebody dealing with that, right? You say all the time that, I have a second career in being an MC, and I think that speaks to my personality of being
Yeah,
able to just
absolutely.
connect with anybody that's going through something and just be able to tell somebody like I'm there and I'm gonna stick it out with you without saying I'm there and I'm gonna stick it out with you. And I think that's the part of lymphedema that I'm really excited for.
I think that one of the issues that a lot of people have with their healthcare providers, whether it's a physician or whatever it is, the whole spectrum of healthcare, is sometimes the healthcare provider just doesn't ever make a connection with the person for whatever the reason, the personality. And that can be challenging to work with that person, because you want to feel something that the comfort level goes both ways. So in that sense, I just feel that you will excel, and that's a good thing. I know you're going to be terrific at whatever you choose to do, and we are just so fortunate that we at SCAN had the opportunity to work with you. Really, it's been fun to watch everyone, grow and thrive. and hopefully learn a thing or two from our scan members, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But like you were saying with that whole aspect of being able to trust your healthcare provider, I think that's
Yes,
what occupational therapists like that's where the bread and butter is because we are so ingrained with being able to be able to use this thing called your therapeutic use of self. So that's being able to use your personality to connect and gain the trust of the person you're working with. In my home care clinical my CI, like my supervisor, the first thing he said, if you give the impression to the client that you don't know what you're talking about, they're going to be very quick to just turn you around and kick you out of their house. Right? So if
sure.
you can connect with somebody first, that's step one, and that'll always be step one. And then you work whatever you want to work in, but you got to be able to talk to people and connect and really just be a person before you're an occupational therapist.
Well, you know what? I'll extend that even further. Any healthcare worker that it's almost like an intimate relationship, and you do have to be like your human side really has to come through, or why do I want to deal with you? So,
Exactly.
yeah, I
Exactly.
get that. I get that. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be fun. We're going to stay in touch with you, Joe. It's going to be fun to see what happens. I know the next thing is your boards in June,
Hmm.
and then wow, we'll see where it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm already so excited and I can't believe how far it's come just since we did the yoga ball drumming and now to see like the new first years, right? So each new year like a new cohort comes in and to see them come up with their own activities and their own stations. It's just so beautiful because like I remember being that first year and never did it cross my mind like, okay, this is something that's gonna last longer than my time here. And it has. It truly has. Like it definitely is
Yeah.
molded the way that some of these other groups are coming together and coming to scan with. So can't be more
You
thankful
know,
for it.
Denise, Dr. Crowley will always say, well, the students will figure it out. And they do. And
Mhm.
every year it's a little different because we have different people and all different people have different ideas. And I'm telling you, from our standpoint at SCAN, the Brain Health Fair is really one of our premier events. And the breakout sessions, well, that's the most fun of all. And, again, thanks to everyone at Monmouth University for making this all possible for us. Special thanks to you, Dr. Joe. And now you're a doctor. And, we feel Mary Beth and I have a little bit of maternal pride here because we've watched you grow. And, yoga ball, I mean, yoga, drum yoga, that was to this day. I wish we could, every time we say, oh, I always say, let's do that. And she just looks at me like, oh, but it's so loud. Yeah. But that's what made it fun. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
it did.
All right, Joe, I am going to, we're going to keep our eyes on you and we will hopefully see you again here on Scan FYI. We're going to check back in with you and best of luck all around.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Scan has truly changed my life, my academic journey, the career path that I'm gonna go down. So can't be more thankful for you and Mary Beth and everyone that's played a part in it. So thank you.
Thank Our pleasure. All right, remember out there, if it's important to you, it's important to us. I'm Andrea Tarr. We'll see you next time on Scan FYI. Bye, everyone, and bye, Joe.
Bye.